There's a number most people have learned to ignore. It updates every second. It's so large that it barely feels real anymore. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The danger isn't how big that number is. The danger is how the government plans to make it disappear. Not with spending cuts, not with higher taxes, and definitely not by paying it back honestly. They're going to erase it by erasing the value of money itself. The moment everything broke. For decades, debt was treated like background noise. As long as the economy grew, the story went, the debt didn't matter. That story quietly died. Today, interest on the national debt consumes more money than entire cornerstone programs of government, more than defense, more than health care for millions. Just interest, the cost of borrowing in the past, is approaching $1 trillion a year. That changes everything. Because when interest becomes one of the largest expenses on the balance sheet, debt stops being passive. It starts hunting. Why governments don't fix debt like families do. When a household gets overwhelmed by debt, it cuts back. No vacations, no subscriptions, fewer luxuries. Governments can't do that. Most of their spending is locked in: retirement benefits, health care, social programs. These aren't line items that can be trimmed. They're political landmines. So when interest payments rise and spending can't fall, only one option remains: borrow more. New debt pays the interest on old debt, which creates more interest, which requires more borrowing. It's not budgeting. It's a feedback loop. The three ways out, and why only one is left. Historically, there are only three nations escape overwhelming debt. Option 1, austerity. Massive tax increases, brutal spending cuts, economic contraction so severe it causes social unrest. No modern politician survives proposing it. Option 2, default. Refuse to pay, shatter trust, destroy the financial system built on government debt being safe. For the world's primary financial anchor, this would be catastrophic. That leaves option 3, the quiet one, the soft default. You don't refuse to pay what you owe. You pay it back in money that buys less every year. This is the soft default. On paper, every bond is honored. In reality, inflation does the dirty work. When prices rise faster than interest rates, the real value of debt shrinks, not because anything was fixed, but because the currency was diluted. It's the most politically painless solution ever invented. No votes, no announcements, just a slow bleed. Why inflation is no longer the enemy. For most of modern history, central banks treated inflation like a fire. Raise interest rates, cool demand, protect purchasing power. That relationship has flipped. When debt reaches extreme levels, high interest rates become lethal. Every rate hike increases the government's own cost of survival. So inflation is no longer something to eliminate, it's something to manage. Not too low, or the debt suffocates the system. Not too high, or confidence collapses. The goal is steady erosion. How the system is rigged to make this work. In a real market, reckless borrowers pay higher interest, but governments can't afford that. So demand for government debt is engineered. Financial institutions are required by regulation to hold it. Pension funds, banks, insurers, all compelled buyers. Whether the return is attractive no longer matters. Participation is mandatory. At the same time, inflation is measured in ways that soften reality. Rising prices are reframed, adjusted, substituted. Cost of living pressure becomes a statistical argument instead of a lived experience. And when private buyers step back, central banks step in, creating money to purchase the debt no one else wants. This keeps interest rates suppressed, but floods the system with currency. Asset prices soar. Living costs follow. Wages lag behind. Who wins and who pays? New money doesn't reach everyone equally. It enters through financial channels, markets, institutions, asset holders. Those closest to the source benefit first, before prices adjust. By the time money reaches wage earners, inflation has already done its damage. This is why wealth concentrates upward during periods of heavy monetary expansion, and why saving feels like running on a treadmill that's speeding up. The death of safe saving. For generations, the formula was simple: work, save, earn interest, retire. That model assumes money holds value. In an inflation-managed system, cash is no longer neutral. It's decaying by design. Bonds preserve nominal value, but lose real purchasing power. To stand still, risk becomes mandatory. Not to get rich, just to avoid falling behind. The end game? Total control. There's one final limitation on this system: cash. Physical money allows exit. It limits how aggressively policy can punish saving. Remove cash, and that restraint disappears. In a fully digital currency system, money can be programmed. Interest can go negative. Spending can be forced. Balances can shrink automatically. The debt problem doesn't disappear, but control over behavior becomes absolute. Final verdict: the debt will not be paid back in real terms. It will be diluted, quietly, gradually, bureaucratically. The winners will be those holding assets that can't be created at will. The losers will be those who trust stability in a system that requires constant erosion to survive. This isn't a crash story, it's a slow-motion transfer, and it's already underway. If you want to understand where this road ends, history has already written the script. And in the next video, we're going to open that chapter. History makes one thing very clear. When governments reach this stage, they don't suddenly find discipline. They don't wake up one day and choose pain over power. They choose control. In the past, that control came through capital controls, forced bond purchases, and confiscation. Today, it comes through regulation, inflation, and digital systems that can be switched on or off with a keystroke. And here's the part most people miss. This isn't about punishing the rich. It's not about fairness. It's not even about ideology. It's about survival of the system. A system built on endless borrowing can only continue if savings are quietly sacrificed, if money slowly melts, if people blame corporations, supply chains, or each other instead of the mechanism doing the damage. That's why this crisis doesn't feel like a crisis. No sirens, no headlines screaming default. Just a steady decline in what your money can do for you. The psychological trap. Inflation doesn't shock people into action. It exhausts them. You work more, you save less, you take more risk just to stay afloat. And over time, you accept what would have once been unthinkable. That's how major financial shifts happen, not through collapse, but through normalization. The national debt won't be solved in Congress, it won't be solved by elections, and it won't be solved honestly. It will be resolved by time and by dilution. The question is no longer, what will the government do? The real question is, what will you do while it's happening? Because in this era, doing nothing is still a decision, and it's usually the most expensive one. This isn't fear, it's awareness, and awareness is the only real hedge left.